CVS, one of the biggest S&P laggards today, after reports that Blue Shield of California will partner with Amazon and Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drugs for its pharmacy network. So is this the tipping point for the healthcare sector? Our Morgan Brennan joins us live in the Hamptons now with Josh Wolfe. He's the co-founder and managing partner of Lux Capital. It's a science and technology-focused VC firm. Morgan?
Scott, thank you. Yes, we can call this CNBC Out East. And Josh, it's great to be sitting here talking to you. Thanks for joining me.
Morgan.
All right, so I do want to start there because you and I have had conversations about healthcare in the past. You have this big news, CVS stock falling. Tech disruption. We've been talking about it coming to healthcare for quite some time. Is this moment a tipping point?
You know, there's something that I think people are not actually talking about that makes it a tipping point, and that actually has to do with labor and unions, so not just technology. If you permit me, I think that we've seen record low participation of people in unions. You have record high support of people wanting to support unions. Biden is very pro-labor, and you're seeing not just a heat wave this summer, but a strike wave. I mean, we basically averted 350,000 or so UPS workers, which would have been like a cardiac arrest for the circulatory commerce system of the country. If we thought COVID was bad, this could have been terrible. Well, if unions win concessions, what do they get? They get higher wages, and then they get health care benefits. So I actually think that there's an unappreciated tailwind that is coming for healthcare services. Private companies like ours, like Maven Clinic, and then lots of public companies, the indexes. This is something that I would be looking at because if labor wins, healthcare services will win. Fertility services, virtual doctors on demand, local pharmacies extensions, you know, I think it's going to be a big tailwind.
Interesting. So so you just mentioned some of your current investments in your portfolio. Are you actively making more investments along these lines?
We are. You've had my partner Dina Shacker on a lot.
Yeah.
She's wonderful. She's really brilliant in healthcare. It's been a magnet for a lot of great entrepreneurs. Pretty much every facet of this, again, from fertility on-demand clinics to people doing mental health to being the back-end software providers for even people like Amazon that are providing some of these services. It really is going to be a tailwind, I think, across the entire sector, particularly domestic U.S.
Yeah. I do want to shift gears a little bit here because the last time you and I spoke, you talked about the fact that maybe one of the biggest opportunities for AI is going to be in biotech as well. I want to dig into that a little bit more and just at a time where we've seen all of these stocks that have AI applications or working on AI investment in the public markets run up pretty ferociously since the beginning of the year. Have we gotten ahead of ourselves in terms of where we are in the process?
Well, hype is always shown in the markets whenever things run up, and people always sort of underestimate things in the long term and overestimate them in the short term, and I think that's what's happening in AI. The first thing that won was the hardware, so NVIDIA. NVIDIA is still vulnerable, okay? You've got a programming language called CUDA that has dominated. You've got AMD waiting in the wake. You have other languages like PyTorch and Triton, which is something that OpenAI is working on. So that's something that I would watch in terms of the vulnerability of the dominance of what people perceive to be a monopoly with NVIDIA. Now, once you get all those chips, those A100 and H1 chips that are being banned in China and being really sought after very aggressively here in the U.S., the first beneficiaries of this have been the OpenAIs, the people that are developing foundation models, all for producing text and video and images. Companies like ours, Hugging Face, that's the repository for all of the AI and ML models, and Runway, that is letting you basically text a prompt in and create a full cinematic video movie, okay? The next wave, though, as you noted, is going to be in biology, and that's requiring a much more sophisticated level of understanding. What that means, now that you have these context windows, which Anthropic was one of the first to really expand, so you can put very large, hundreds of thousands of tokens inside, you can put an entire genome in. If you can put a genome into AI, now you can start to do protein structure prediction. And sure enough, there are groups that are doing just this. It's one of the themes that I think is going to be a big over the next 2 years for venture. We are taking groups out of big tech. One of the groups that we just took out of big tech, which we haven't announced publicly, is a group that predicted the protein structures from gene sequences better than AlphaFold and DeepMind. It's going to be a new startup, and it's going to mean not only being able to predict protein structures to design drugs, but also ultimately, and this sounds like science fiction, developing synthetic life from software code to being able to develop cells that never existed before to produce things like insulin and all kinds of drugs that are going to help humanity.